Scott, welcome to Competencies Without a Classroom. This podcast, this is for middle school and high school students. These are busy individuals. They don't have time for fluff, Scott. So we're going to jump right into it. And we start every episode the same way. We ask this exact same question, kind of helps to set a tone for the rest of the interview, but really it's because it's what our listeners want answers to. So Scott Barker, pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
No. I was lucky enough to go to the Amalfi Coast a year and a half ago, and there was a big sign out of one of the best pizza restaurants in the world that said "Death to Pineapple." So although it can be delicious, I think I took that sign. I was like, all right, if the makers of the best pizza in the world don't want it on there, I'm gonna trust the experts.
Trust the experts. And you know what? That's a good segue into hopefully some more conversation we're going to have today about kind of mentors and the importance that can have with your growth. But before we get into that, Scott, a lot of people in the sales and marketing world know who you are, but I don't know if that's true for high school students and their teachers. So who is Scott Barker and what are you doing for work right now?
Yeah, for sure. I'll keep it succinct. So I currently run my own management consulting company. I also publicly hold two positions, head of revenue and partnerships at a media company called Sales Hacker. Think of it like a TechCrunch for salespeople. And I'm also the head of strategic engagement at Outreach. It's actually one of the fastest growing software companies in the US. And I also host a podcast of my own called the Sales Engagement Podcast and write a weekly newsletter called The Forecast. On top of that, I act as an advisor for multiple startups and do some light angel investing as well.
All right. Well, if that's distinct, I don't know. I don't want to hear the long answer. Yeah. It's a good thing we're doing away with business cards because I don't think you could fit all that on one card.
I don't think so.
Okay, let's drill down on one of those for the students. I'm sure they've heard management consultant before. They probably think of something like a Price Waterhouse or Deloitte. But what do you mean when you say you're, management consultant?
Yeah. So I came up through the sales track, I would call it. So I've been kind of selling my whole life. And along the way, I learned different strategies on how to sell and how to market in different industries. So now I teach organizations those learnings that I've had in my career.
Okay, cool. So if my high school student listening to this, can you speak a little bit? Obviously, you just touched on your journey working in different sales orgs, but a lot of the high school students using our programming are trying to figure out what's going to happen after grade 12. Am I going to post-secondary? Should I use some of my money that I've saved up and start my own venture? Like, what did that path look like for you? How did you get to sales and then have the realization that I can take some of the stuff that I've learned and now teach that to others?
Yeah. So a mentor of mine has always said that sales is the great equalizer. So I'm actually a college dropout with no degree, and sales gave me a seat at the table, that gave me the opportunity to show people that maybe I could do more than just sell. And, a lot of people, there's this funny way that Hollywood portrays salespeople, and it's not always the most sought after path. And I guess my advice for those listening is, to take a really long, hard look at technology sales. So in software, it's a fantastic career. There's a position called a BDR, which is a business development rep, that really doesn't require a lot of formal education or experience, just a willingness to outwork everyone around you and constantly learn, because the environment of technology is changing so rapidly that you have to have this kind of lifelong learning mentality. And it'll be a grind for 1 to 2 years. It's actually a pretty hard job. A lot of people don't make it. But if you can get past those initial tough years, it honestly opens up this path where you don't have to stay in sales. You could go into marketing, all these other revenue generating roles, and the options become limitless. It's kind of your first port of entry into this incredible field known as technology that's kind of swallowing the earth whole as we speak.
That's a great answer. And, being in a sales role in the company that I work for right now, it has opened doors to try new things. Starting a podcast is an easy example. I've had a number of other professionals from the sales industry on this podcast already. We had somebody from Uvaro, one of the tech sales instructor, talking about what they're doing there to help level people up. And that's probably a secret kind of motivation for me for having so many people from the sales industry on this podcast, is to dispel that myth that Hollywood, it's not the Wolf of Wall Street image that you think it is. And not only will it open up doors and create opportunities for you, like you just said, I personally believe that a lot of the life skills that I have are because of what I was learning in these sales environments, right? And in my eyes, sales skills are very much life skills, from just the willingness to pick up a phone and call somebody, to my confidence, to everything I'm doing on a day-to-day came from that experience, right?
Couldn't agree more.
Cool. So now we know a little bit more about you, Scott, and kind of what keeps you busy from, let's say, 9 to 5. Everything you listed makes me think it goes a little bit past 5 o'clock. But what's something that keeps you busy between 5 and 9? Who is Scott as a person?
Yeah. I mean, I think the goal is to get to a point where work feels a lot like play. So this question is kind of a funny one, because I do work past 5, but a lot of what I do is writing my newsletter, which I thoroughly enjoy. I just get to kind of wrestle with the thoughts that I have, or maybe recording a podcast with someone I find wildly interesting, and I get to pick their brain and get like a free MBA by interviewing them. But what do I like to do outside? So I love to travel. So my girlfriend actually used to be a travel blogger, which was pretty cool when she was doing that. So I've got to see a lot of the world. My job, thanks to the good old internet, I can do it from anywhere. So I've worked from Portugal, Spain, Peru, you name it. So I love to travel. Winter's coming up. I'm Canadian and from Vancouver, so hopefully go up Whistler, do some snowboarding. I surf when I'm on vacation. Dinners out with friends, of course. Debating all sorts of crazy stuff that's going on in the world is always fun. And building, like I said, it's play for me. So building little side hustles and projects, I find really enjoyable. And I think multiple streams of income in this environment in 2020 is super important. So you can just tinker on a little project, and sometimes those projects end up making you money too, which is always nice.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And it's something we haven't talked about too much on this podcast is kind of the conversation around life-work balance. And regardless of what industry you're in these days, it really isn't just like the 9 to 5. But if you can find something that allows you to become a lifelong learner and it becomes play, then you're not going to have to look at it as an A and B, right? So, and if it can make you a little money on the side, that doesn't hurt you either. Scott, are you on Instagram right now?
I am on Instagram.
Okay. Reason I like to ask is, I love Instagram. I have an account as well. I've taken it off my phone often just because when I'm looking at a feed, it's not always the most authentic. There's a lot of people who do use it to kind of show their best of and their highlight reel moments. I usually kind of use this question as a segue for you to speak candidly about something that's the opposite of that. So a failure. What is something you've done, let's say over these last 10 years, was a big failure for you that you've learned from that would be important for the young people listening to this to hear about?
Yeah. I don't know if we have enough time, my man. So it goes on and on. The thing that comes to my mind, because I was just thinking about this because it's close to the day actually. So 5 years ago, I was actually sleeping on a friend's couch in a studio apartment, and I had just quit my job, which I didn't like. It was kind of it was in sales, but it was one of those kind of soul sucking environments, if you will, because they are out there. Just be wary. They're not every job is awesome in sales. And I was feeling completely lost. I was like, okay, do I go back to bartending, which I did when I was younger? I had no idea where to go. And I eventually kind of swallowed my pride, and I was in a management position before. I swallowed my pride and took this entry-level position in tech, which I thought at the time was beneath me. I was worried about all my peers judging me, and I thought I was killing it before, and now I'm gonna have to how do I tell all my friends this? And I guess my thought process is you will get lost, and you will get lost many times. I went down so many weird paths and explored different things, but just remember, you don't have to stay there. Even though it feels like you're stuck, that's just your brain tricking you, because our brains don't do well under stress. And usually those are stressful situations. So I would urge people, like, when you find yourself in those positions, don't look back, just look forward. And many people are not going to see what you see, the vision that you see for yourself. Not everyone will share it. And, I'm so lucky to be in this position where I'm at in my life. And I was lucky that I saw this since I was a young kid, but there were certainly times in my life where I was surrounding myself with people that did not see that at all. And it was like laughable that would ever happen. So you have to stay focused on your own vision and ignore the noise, because the failures are inevitable. There's going to be dark periods in your life. It happens, but you don't have to stay there.
That's a great answer. Do you remember, Scott, was there a moment that kind of triggered it for you to make you realize I just need to block out that noise and kind of focus on myself? Or was that going back to kind of the mentors you've had in your life, or something you've just always had inside your head to listen to?
Yeah, this is going to be almost a cop-out answer, but when I look at what it was that was actually the catalyst and the trigger, It was taking care of my body physically, which translated into mentally. So when we're young, you graduate, you do whatever, you maybe start partying, and it's much harder to think with a clear head when you're not getting enough sleep, when you're maybe out too late, when you're, drinking alcohol, consuming substances, whatever it may be. It's hard to think clearly. So I remember that period in my life. I just was like, okay, I'm going to start meditating. I'm going to start doing all the things that people tell you you should do. I'm going to journal. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to start, working out every single day. And then through that, some of the bad habits and activities just no longer felt appealing. And I was able to better regulate my emotions and understand when I was around people who made me feel better about myself and who didn't. And sometimes we're too numb to kind of pick that up.
Dude, I don't think that's a cop-out answer. I think that's an important answer, right? Clean body, clean mind, clear results, right? So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Okay, Scott, all these different roles that you've listed, you've been part of a hiring decision or two. Is that safe to say? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah. So I'm applying for a job to work with you. So is another candidate. We have the exact same resume. What is something you found over the years? Like, what's that competency or that soft skill that you look for when you want to bring someone onto your team? What's going to help that person stand out from the other?
Yeah. So this one is easy for me. It's harder to actualize, but it's easy when you're on the hiring position, and it is the raw passion. And what I mean by passion is this: some people want a job, right? They want a job in a field, working roughly in this parameters. And then there's certain people that want this job to work for you, and here is why. And they basically go all in on that opportunity, and they can explain exactly why it fits into their plan. And that's what hiring managers want to see. It's not just, they're not looking for a job, they're looking for this job, and they're willing to do anything humanly possible to get this job. And you have to have that mentality. I'll share a quick story. One of the game-changing roles in my career was 3.5 years ago, when I was able to build out the kind of partnerships and revenue program at Sales Hacker, which was then acquired by Outreach. And I beat out 400 people for that job, and it was woefully underqualified. And I just went I had blinders on, and I stalked the CEO on every social media platform. I reached out to every single other person on the Sales Hacker team to see if I could have a chat with them, not for an interview, just be like, hey, what's this role entail? How can I be successful if I get it? I started thinking like I already had it. I built out a 90-day strategy. I built out a mock webinar with all my past VPs of sales talking, good about me. I created videos. There was nothing in my brain that would let them not hire me. And it's that passion that will get those game-changing roles that will change everything for you. But it takes a borderline obsession to make it happen.
Well, I think it worked out for you. That's so important for the students to hear because there's so many students in high school where they'll be given a rubric for an assignment and they'll go to the teacher and ask questions of the rubric and they stay within those parameters. But if it's something you really want in life, you're gonna have to go outside of that rubric and really apply yourself. We've talked about it a few times on other episodes of this podcast. The company I work for, my blueprint, one of our core values is wants to be here. And when we're interviewing people, we measure against that. And if you just applied to 100 jobs and we were one of them, we'll be able to figure that out pretty quickly in the interview process. The company wants you to want to be there. So that was a great answer.
Amen. Totally, man. And I couldn't agree more with your idea of like, so in school, the rules are rules and you got to follow them.
Yeah.
In society, laws are rules and you got to follow those.
Yeah.
But rules are just guidelines. Like, whatever they're saying that's on a sheet of paper, those are guidelines and you can play around them. And that's where all the magic happens.
That's a great point. In sales, a lot of the stuff we talk about is how do you cut through the noise? If you just do the same thing that everybody else did within that rubric, you're going to look like a number. So how do you cut through the noise and get that person's attention, right?
Totally.
Scott, what's a life skill that you weren't taught in high school, but maybe you wish you were?
Oh man, so many. How to structure your taxes is huge. I start talking to mom and dad about that early. A little bit about corporate structure. There's a lot of different avenues that are becoming more popular where you don't have to have an employee to employer relationship all the time. You can be a contractor. Sometimes you work in your benefit to run your own corporation. That's how I have it structured. So that would be awesome. And then business communication. So how to present a point succinctly and backed by data, right? The business communication is quite different than how you would just chat with your friends, particularly when you're dealing with executives. You got to get to the point as soon as possible. So I would start working on that as well. And I always think of the famous Mark Twain quote, if I had more time, I'd write a shorter letter. So work on getting your thoughts into easily digestible formats.
Yeah, less is more. Speaking of digestible thoughts, one of the thoughts that I hold close and strong, dear to me is the strong opinion loosely held that I believe grades and tests, they do more harm than they do good. Do you have something like that, Scott? A strong opinion loosely held that would be important for the young people listening to this to hear?
Yeah, I have many, but I'll do one that I think is really relevant for people to hear, and maybe I'll sneak two in. So one is you don't need a degree to be successful in this world anymore. There's things like Khan Academy. There's all sorts of different interesting avenues. What you do need to be successful is a lifelong learner. So education is the most important thing in the world, yes, but it doesn't always have to come in a formal education. So that is one thing that I feel strongly about. Second is there's this misnomer out there that you have to pick a career when you're 18 and then you're stuck with set career for 40 years and that's it. Right. And so there's this overwhelming amount of pressure. I remember feeling it. I could channel the feeling right now of being like, I can't make this decision. There's way too many options. And if I pick one, then I'm stuck with this and I'm going to do it forever. And oh my God, it's so overwhelming. Yeah. When in reality, I think I just recently read, we're all going to have about like 8 to 9 careers now, because this exponential pace of change and growth that's happening. So go all in. Going all in on something is huge, but know that you can change at any point and you're still building skills that will transfer over to something else. So that's another one. Don't get paralyzed in that fear. Just pick something that you vaguely think you're interested in, go all in, be a voracious learner, and then pivot if you need to.
That's huge. That's important. And again, for the students listening to this, Scott mentioned it, but it's important to highlight the takeaway from that was not you can drop out and things will work out and be successful. No. In fact, it was about lifelong learning. So whether you have that nice degree or not, if you're not a voracious lifelong learner, you won't have the success that you want. If you don't put in the work, degree or not, you're not going to have that success. So listen carefully, right?
Yes. And university is amazing for that, is to teach you how to be a lifelong learner. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about university. And I am a big proponent of university. Thanks for calling that out. It is extremely important. Yeah, good highlight.
That makes sense. So Scott, let's finish up with some rapid fire questions for you. You have a billboard. You can write anything on it. What are you putting on that billboard?
To get what you want, you have to deserve what you want. The world is not a crazy enough place to reward the undeserving. And that's a Charlie Munger quote, who was Warren Buffett's kind of right-hand man.
Yeah.
And what that means to me is we all have wants in life, and we all have visions of who we want to be and what we want to accomplish. Usually there's a happiness element, there's a, health, wealth, love, and happiness element to our dreams. And it's not enough just to have those dreams. You have to be the kind of person that deserves to have that life. And you deserve that from giving back to your community, from developing skills, from doing the really hard self-work to figure yourself out and what's important to you.
Right.
So that's what I'd say. To get what you want, you have to deserve what you want.
That's great. And it feels better when you've earned it too, right? Rather than just something's given to you. So put in the work. IQ or EQ, you can only pick one. Which one are you picking?
EQ all day.
Yeah, good answer. You talked about going to school in Vancouver. Did you have a favorite class in high school?
I liked English a lot. Yeah, okay. I think writing is a skill that's not going anywhere. So writing, I think, is one of the most important skills you'll have if you go into the field of business. So don't sleep on it.
No, and we've talked a fair bit on previous episodes about the skill of copywriting and all the resources that are available these days, right? So
yeah,
it's a big one for you. Speaking of English and reading, what's a book that you've read in your adult life that has had such an impact on you that you wish you would have read before you're 18?
Oh, lots. I'm a pretty avid reader. The one that comes to mind, and it's almost cliche to say, but it really did have an impact on me, particularly this paragraph actually explaining love of all things, is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. It's a very well-known book, but if you give it the time of day and really process what it's telling you, and there's some religious undertones that you can or cannot agree with. I choose not to identify with them, but the lessons in there, it's a pretty good manual for how to be an effective individual.
Very true. And one of them, number 7, Sharpen the Saw, comes back to a lot of what you've been talking about today, right? Which is lifelong learning.
Totally.
Okay. Hypothetical scenario for you, Scott. You're the superintendent of a school board. You're tasked with deciding one competency, one skill that each student is going to need to display evidence of in their digital portfolio in order to graduate. What is that skill?
It's a skill I don't have, and I'm jealous of those who do have it and started earlier, because it's harder to learn later in life. It would be coding. I mean, it seems to be where we're heading. So if you can sell things and build things, you're unstoppable. So if you can learn how to build through code, I think that would be a very useful competency, at least a base knowledge. You don't have to be a programmer, but having a base knowledge would be helpful.
Yep, it's a great answer. And luckily, a lot of education across North America is moving towards putting that kind of education at a younger age. Not that you have to grow up to be a software developer, but understanding logic, understanding computational thinking, everything that comes out of that. And if you can combine the ability to code and be a great writer, then watch out, right?
It's over.
Yeah. It's over. Okay. Scott, this has been awesome. Where can people listening to this learn a bit more about you if they want to follow your journey?
Yeah, LinkedIn's a super important platform. I'm pretty active on there. So you can follow me, Scott Barker. You mentioned Instagram. I'm at Scotty Barks on that one. You can Google the Forecast newsletter. It's where I share some thoughts on my outlooks on life, as well as some best practices I'm seeing in the revenue arena. So for sales and marketers out there. Yeah, those are probably the best ways.
Cool. Well, Scott, from everybody here, we appreciate your time, man, and have a great week.
Thanks, Damien. That was a lot of fun.